permit me here and now to promise as a good comrade and a fellow artist that I will not report any of this, whatever it is, to the police.
Welcome to Abandoned Albums, the documentary podcast. Each week, our intrepid group of researchers and music archivists dig through the record crates of the world, finding those albums that may have been lost over time. If a new artist is discovered along the way, that's all the better. Using a patent-pending algorithm and spirited debate, we pick one album to discuss. Once that is settled, we will invite the artists to Thunder Love Studio to chat with your hosts, Keith R. Higgins and Jeff Calhoun. When we're lucky, they say yes. Our mission with Abandoned Albums is simple: to make sure artists' recorded work remains, or in some cases, lands on, the cultural radar. We invite you to sit back and relax. Thank you for joining us.
Man or Astroman is a group that the way in which they inspired me is almost immeasurable, I think. And it was the perfect storm for me. You've got to understand that in addition to, my first musical gift was Van Halen 2 and The Ventures' greatest hits. And I was living in Los Angeles at the time. My dad was doing a lot of surfing. So that genre of Dick Dale and The Ventures and all of that surf rock, right? The twangy, Twinder fin reverb, that gallop strum that you get. I was predisposed to like this music. You take a 14-year-old kid that already likes The Ventures, a surf rock style band that has loaded up the stage with old televisions that are all wired together in this network of cabling, and they're firing off samples to start each song that come from these old crappy, black and white sci-fi movies, some of them foreign. How could you not fall in love with that? And then to make stupid stupider, they were unbelievable players. And with the energy of 1,000 hurricanes, just blow the doors off. You've got a drummer whose pace was like Adderall on crack. You had a guitar player that was hitting every note. They were in total control while being as reckless as possible. The energy and the creativity, the movies playing in the background behind them while they performed. This is a band that built their own human-sized Tesla coil to bring on stage and create their own fucking lightning. These were nerds. Right? The sci-fi wasn't as fi with this band. They were science people.
Wow.
And to this day, you'll meet people that if you bring up the band Man or Astroman, they go, "Oh, I saw them live and it was life-changing." So to get to spend a little time with Brian Teasley from Man or Astroman, I'm giddy. I cannot wait.
Let's get to it.
Here's our conversation with Brian Teasley from Man or Astroman. Enjoy.
It's just the normal noises in here.
Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, Jeff's been after this for a while.
Yeah. I mean, so Keith and I talk about our Desert Island albums a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you were to ask me, and I think the three of us all, Brian, you certainly have seen more concerts than you could ever even think to count. And Keith and I have seen hundreds, possibly thousands of concerts. If I had to pick a favorite, gun to my head, who's the best live performance you've ever seen, I don't know that I've ever had more fun than at a Manor Astroman show.
Oh, wow. That is too sweet. I wish I could agree with you. Most of the Manor Astroman, or I will say this, all of the Manor Astroman shows that I have been to, it's mostly looking at three people's asses in front of me while I'm playing the drums, and it's not the same for me. But yeah, it's always fun though. Thank you though.
It's a singular group, and I'd like to, because gosh, I was thinking about anniversaries today and when things came out. It's been 10 years since DEF CON.
Mm-hmm.
Which seems crazy because it feels like yesterday. It feels like just last year that album came out. I want to go all the way back to the beginning because I know, Brian, you and I both live in the wonderful city of Birmingham, Alabama.
Yep.
A fantastic place to live, a fantastic place to be a part of the music scene. But you were, over the course of your career, you have played all 50 states for sure. I imagine most of the globe. I mean, you've toured the world many times.
Definitely, I think I've played in 51 countries, but it's still like a lot of Asia I'm missing. Played in Taiwan and South Korea, Japan, obviously, but where a lot of people have gone. But I've never played India or anywhere besides South Africa. So there's a whole wide world that I have not been to.
How about Australia or New Zealand?
Yeah, for sure. I will say, being a kid from Alabama, and I speak for the three of us that started the band, we really had no expectation of ever getting to probably go past Florida and even then past Orlando. So getting to have people bring us all over the globe to play is probably one of the coolest things that we got from the band, or have gotten, or getting from the band. Even though now today it's kind of like back to how it started. It's kind of like our midlife crisis high school garage band. It's gone full circle, but it's nice not to be in that mode where you're touring all the time and having to put out things based on deadlines and all those kind of things that even for a moderate, decent size indie band in the 90s or something like that, there's still a bit of machinery that you have to kind of conform to just keep the whole thing going. I mean, even if you're a band that really does things just a certain way, like Fugazi or something, it's still, you still have to define what you're trying to do and get out there to people and go tour. And, it takes a lot to put that together, for sure.
Yeah.
Even doing it all yourself.
I'd love to go back to those days in Auburn, maybe a dorm room, maybe a house that you shared together, something like that. But what does that look like, the genesis of this band?
Brian Causey, who is Star Crunch, and myself were playing music like in 1990 together, and kind of beating around the edges of what Man or Astroman became. It was more like less of like intended to be like a live thing. We were just kind of making weird tapes. You know, we had grown up on a lot of like post-punk stuff like Echo and the Bunnymen and Gang of Four. I think growing up in Alabama and the weird contradiction of being in Birmingham, which is a pretty urban, like metropolis light kind of. It's not like growing up in rural Alabama as much. You know, we had cool record stores, and it wasn't amazing, but there were cool shows happening. And we just, I don't know. I think we kind of wanted to we never embraced like rootsy stuff or Southern rock. That just seemed, I don't know. You know, there was something appealing to being, say, no, we're in the Bauhaus, and or stuff like that. You know, it was how we kind of made our own identity to differentiate ourselves. And then, I think we were doing like kind of kitschy, quirky instrumental stuff, but like with drum machines and stuff like that, just on 4-track. And then I went back to my parents' house. I guess it was 1990 over that Christmas break, came back here to Birmingham and just went through my parents' old records in the attic. And they had a bunch of like Ventures and Dwayne Eddy and records of that nature that were just, even some that were like instrumental, but that maybe they were twist records, but still, I don't know, it kind of connected the stuff we were trying to do that we didn't really have a great definition for what it was. And then hearing those and connecting that. And I think none of us wanted to like really sing that much or write lyrics about our girlfriends not liking us. And it was fast and it was punk, and we grew up on like punk rock stuff and hardcore. So I think that's how the idea started. And then I went to Chuck, who had the Wuxtry store in Cabo Heights here in Birmingham. That was like a sister store to the Athens and Atlanta one. And I was talking to him about it, and the Phantom Surfers had just put out one of their first 7 inches. And I think it was Chuck that turned me on to the Shadowy Man on a Shadowy Planet. And it was something like, there's something like satisfying that there were other people kind of doing what we were doing, or like it didn't seem so absurd, I think, to like try to make instrumental music like that, with if the fact that there was like not really a scene, but a couple other bands in that realm.
I think for a lot of people, the live show was the hook. I mean, the records were super fun, but if you saw the band live, there's this train wreck of surf rock instrumental and like almost a live MST3K episode.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were trying to be more of a freak show than we actually ended up being, because the stuff that we had really like seen a lot live were like scary, like 80s era Butthole Surfers concerts and like Ministry, like at the height of like Skinny Pop, like just weird, like freaky, shocky kind of like rock music that was theatrical like that. And I think we didn't ever want to use our real names. We didn't really want people to know who we are. We were going to change, like kind of like the Butthole Surfers, going to change our names on every record. And I don't know. There was also this kind of parallel universe going on where you had these bands like Pearl Jam starting to get notoriety in a big way and live, and I don't know, those kind of the bands of that era that were very earnest and sincere, and it seemed like, and no slight to that, like, but everybody was like singing about how bad their childhood was. It's like my dad wasn't there for my t-ball game kind of stuff, and that just didn't speak to us. Like, we wanted to be maybe not shocking, but kind of weird for weird's sake, I guess, because we were into that kind of stuff. And we definitely didn't want to be earnest. We definitely didn't want to be necessarily sincere. And like, yeah, it was just, we were kind of as influenced by things that we despised as much as things we liked, if that makes any sense.
Some.
That's a little bit contradictory there.
Yeah.
Well, you kind of can, I think people define their cultural identity sometimes by saying, "Oh shit, I don't know exactly what I like, but I hate that shit."
Gotcha.
Or maybe it's a movie that just seems really fake or whatever, and then you see like totally surreal, bizarre, like David Lynch movie for the first time, and you're like, "Oh, that's I can't quite even define it yet, but that's where my head is."
Got it.
There is a
that's like my high school brain working. So
yeah,
it hasn't changed much, honestly. So
there is a Wikipedia page for the band that states that the overwhelming majority consensus is that the name of the group came from the 1964 poster for the movie Human Vapor.
Yeah, that's actually correct, and that's got a funny story relating back to Wuck Street Records. It's actually 1962, not to parse hairs.
Oh,
but so there was this poster. It's actually in my room right now. I still have it. It's one of the few things I've kept all the years. That was at Wuck Street Records in Birmingham. And I used to beg, like, I started going there when I was like in 8th grade to this record store, and like, what's this band Husker Du like, or and just got turned on to so much great music by Chuck there. And he had this poster for this movie with this guy kind of turning into fumes. It's like this Japanese movie, but it wasn't like a monster. It wasn't like a Godzilla type Toho Studios kind of. Oh, it may have been a Toho Studios movie, but it wasn't like a monster movie. And anyway, it had the taglines and the pull quotes on it were like ridiculous. It's like, see if I can still remember. It's like, born a woman but recreated from outer space. It loves like a man. What is it, man? Or Astroman? And I just always wanted that poster, and I had tried to get it for about 6 years. And the day he closed the store, he gave it to me.
Oh, that's great.
And it ended up being on our wall in Brian and I's college apartment. And we were trying to desperately come up with some names. I come up with some really bad ones. And then we're just looking, it's like, let's be Man or Astroman. And I don't know. I always like the name because it's like strange that it's a question. And then with the man and the man at the end, it has a weird symmetry to it. So I kind of liked, it just kind of looked good for some reason. You know how some names do that?
sure.
So yeah, it kind of worked.
Are you familiar with the website setlist.fm?
Somewhat. Yeah. It's like where like the band's shows and the sets that they played and everything.
It's an amazing repository of set lists from across the decades. And I pulled it up in preparation for tonight thinking, I bet I know what song Man or Astroman played more than any other. And I was wrong. I was interested because I would have forecast, and I think it's based on my impressions of the song and its appearance on multiple early releases. I would have bet Nitrous Burnout.
I go to Indianapolis every year to see the Indy 500. I go there with friends to drive and race. Every year when they go there to qualify, They usually have to go as fast as they possibly can to get a front row position. They put nitro in their cars sometimes instead of the fuel that's intended to be in the cars, so that their cars will go faster. And they do, for 5 or 10 laps. And then they blow all the hell.
You know, I wouldn't bet that, because that was like at a certain point, I think. I have insider information on this. So.
yeah, it's true.
You got the inside track.
We did play that a lot early on. I will say, I think I have seen that. I may have even seen it for us, and it's missing probably 1,500 shows or something crazy.
I have to imagine, yeah.
So it. I'm not sure how accurate that would be, but I would think it would have to be something like Invasion of the Dragon Men off our first record, being that we started playing that very early on and like still play it. So that would be one that I would guess would be the most.
100% correct.
Invasion by creatures from space confirmed. New York City may be their next objective. Eyewitnesses describe space creatures as dragon men.
There's things I think that we've done, especially on the like late 90s records and maybe that DEF CON records, some of the singles that like sound really good and cool in the studio. And like, I mean, like a lot of bands, this is obviously not a weird thing, but then live, they just didn't, I don't know. They just didn't work. I don't know if it's because we fluffed them up in the studio with ear candy or whatever. And it worked, but like there's a few that we've tried a million times to play and just like never sounds right. And it's just I don't know why. It's not even necessarily that it's because we added a bunch of tracks or a bunch of things. It's just like we just couldn't recreate it. I think it also kind of comes back to like the songs that we kind of jammed out together. Like Brian like always comes up with like the largest amount of the song, and then we kind of would hash out some of the arrangement and things like that. But those that we kind of made in a practice space together and then go and record them in the studio, a lot of times those are the songs we end up playing live, as opposed to like if we wrote our parts in the studio or it was improvised or something like that.
How did you go about choosing, because the samples that you incorporated into the music represent a huge diversity of film and a huge diversity of quality of films, I might add. How did you guys go about picking where you wanted to lift samples from? What was inspiring you?
Well, I think we realized early on that the problem with a lot of surf music is it gets samey at some point. I know that's like such a common thing. And we're like, and when we had at one point so many songs, we're like, how are we going to remember? Like, oh yeah, the one that goes, blah, 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 blah. It's like, I'm joking, but like to a degree, but like, we kind of had, there was a few weird sources for that. We were also really into like some hip hop and whatnot. Like, and we read that De La Soul had used an Akai S1000 sampler, and we were like, we've got to use that De La Soul sampler. And like the sampling on 3 Feet High and Rising was so cool. And then the other two weird kind of things of like use. There's like a few things that really I happen to be listening to all at the same time. The Eno and Burn record, My Life in the Bush of Ghosts, that have all the like gospel preachers going over tracks, and then there's this band called Jazz Butcher that David J. from like Love and Rockets and Bauhaus and Toads on Tail played in for a bit, and they have a song called The Bubonic Plague, and like if you listen to it, it's like literally the early Man or Astroman sample format. Like you can tell, like we lifted a lot from that formula. And then also that, you know, strangely, I never like to admit this because it's not one of the cooler references, but that Metallica One song that was on MTV so much, that has the Johnny Got His Gun samples, was just like kind of took you to a very like evocative cinematic space. And like granted, ours were mostly like humorous and weird, but it definitely kind of set the tone, and there were kind of markers for what the hell song we were playing too. You know, when people like a song that we played a lot, like Man Made of CO2, is something where a lot of times the crowd will realize what sample it is, and then they'll finish the sample. That's kind of like us like getting the crowd to hold up lighters and sing along together, you know, with like a breakdown with just the kick drum going or something. That's like our version of that.
That's awesome.
Oh man. We were very fortunate to have the boys from Salvo join us, and we talked a little bit about Jim Marr. And I don't know that you can talk about Man or Astroman without bringing up Jim Marr and the role that he played with. I mean, because the band was very prolific in your early days. I mean, you cranked out numerous full-length records, and Jim worked on a lot of that. I didn't realize that at some point you became co-owner of that studio with him.
Yeah, it was mostly like I was for a short time with Rob, who's Coco, and Jim when we moved the studio to Atlanta. And then I got out at some point, and Rob and Jim went on for a while, and its studio's still there. It's still a beautiful studio that Rob built by himself, called I don't know what it's called now, but this guy Ben Allen that does a lot of big indie records records there and uses it. But yeah, Jim was we didn't know where the hell to record. There wasn't like lots of recording studios in Auburn when we were going to school there. And there was this, I'm trying to remember what this tape is called. But it was like a compilation of like local Montgomery bands. I'll have to think of it. And all the bands, and I know a lot of people that are in the bands now, they've gone on to be in better bands, because this is like everybody's like starting out band that, you know, there's a band that sounds like Sonic Youth, and there's a band that sounds like this, and, you know, there's a band that sounds like REM. Everybody, it was like in their teens and really wearing their influences on their sleeves at that point. But all the drum sounds and tones on this tape were great. And so I looked at where these bands recorded it, and most of it had been recorded at this place called Zero Return Studios in Wetumpka, Alabama. I think technically it's actually in Elmore, but it said Wetumpka, Alabama. So it had a number there, and it was the same number that Jim had for a million years. And I called it, and he was like, yeah, well, if y'all want to come in sometime, then come on down. You pass Mortar Creek Bridge there, and then you take a left and go on the dirt road. And then once you get past the first dirt road, you go past the railroad track, you see a tiny little post office. And it's just like, what? It was like we were literally going into the Deliverance world. And we grew up at this house that's like, it looks like, just like the front is covered in kudzu. It's just like one of those typical Southern scenes where it's just been eaten by all the vines. And we go in and Jim's there. He's like just this like old, like autodidactic, hippie, weird genius guy that had all this great equipment. I think the reason why he had all that stuff, if I remember correctly, and I'm probably getting some of this wrong, but there was a guy, a really amazing filmmaker named Jeff Kreines that did some really influential films, like a documentary that won a bunch of awards called 17. This is like early 80s, I think, late 70s. And another film that was kind of like the super, super, super precursor to like a Blair Witch Project kind of thing with called Demon Lover Diary. They may be on YouTube. And then the same guy actually shot, I believe, did a lot of the shooting or editing for a really big Depeche Mode documentary called Depeche Mode 101. And it's all black and white documentary. It was beautiful. And he also lived out in the middle of nowhere in the woods out there. And him and Jim were friends. And Jeff was super savvy and on all the early internet chat rooms and boards like that before eBay existed. And a lot of people were starting to sell off that gear and get into ADATs and all this. And of course, like Jim and Jeff being so old school in that way, they were just like eating up all the old Neumann mics and, just all the old Ampeg stuff, all the old like Fairchild compressors and things like that. So it's like, why are we in this weird little cabin house that has this amazing equipment? So it was cool. It was great to get to have that out there. And it was so out in the middle of nowhere when we were there. It's like basically all we could do is record.
Yeah.
Or walk by the train tracks. That were the two options.
I got a segue from that as you talk about acquiring cool old mics and vintage gear. Tell us about the time you were on the FBI's most wanted list.
Oh, yes, please.
That's a big fast forward. I think it was like 2004 maybe. And I just started playing with this band, the Polyphonic Spree. Seth, a guy that started doing lights for Manor Astroman like in 98 was working for them, and I ended up filling in for a guy that was in a band called The View that had put out a record on RCA. And then he started working for the Polyphonic Spree, so I went out there and played with them. And then about a month later, I had borrowed one of the guys in the band, Mark Piro, who's a bass player, builds these kind of crazy old mics that are really filtered out and kind of sound like talking through a coffee can, awesome, like old AM radio kind of sounding vocals. And you can use them for a lot of cool things, for mainly like an effect mic. But I took that, and if you look up the Copperphone is what it's called. I didn't think that it looked exactly like a pipe bomb. I don't think I've ever held a pipe bomb, or I certainly have never made a pipe bomb. I wasn't one of these kids with like the anarchist book, or like, I need to be ready for when it all goes down and have my Molotov cocktail batch ready to go. I wasn't that kid. And then I landed in the airport in Birmingham, and my luggage wasn't there, and I was like pissed, and find please find my luggage, with whoever it was, Delta or whoever. And I went to Taco Bell before I got home. Like you do. First thing, after coming back. We had just been, I think we had played Austin City Limits or something, and just coming back, and this guy walked up to me in my backyard here in Avondale, Birmingham, and said, "Hey, are you Brian Teasley?" And I said, "Yeah." It was weird enough that I was like, "Do I want to say I am?" And he said, he goes like this. He leaned over to a shirt and to whatever, like, walkie-talkie microphone thing. And it's like, we got him. And then the cars pulled up and like blocked the back driveway. And it was really crazy, because it was just a few years, I guess, after Guantanamo Bay kind of stuff. And I was like, oh my God, somebody's planted something in my luggage, or something got really off, or they mistaken my identity. And I was just like already imagining what it's like to gurgle that much water with a bag on my head. I was like, this is not going to end up well for me if they think I'm a terrorist. And then, strangely enough, because we had just performed on a couple of those TV shows, I finally, I heard them talking that it was a suspicious device, and I just remembered that, I put that microphone in there. Maybe that's what it was. And I said, hey, I know this is crazy, but I have this band performing with what I think is the thing you were worried about on national television. And this was back when TiVo was a thing. Can I go over to my TiVo and show you? And it's like, they probably shouldn't have let me. If I was a real terrorist, I probably could have, like, the TiVo's actually a bomb. But yeah, and then it started really de-escalating there, because like, there it is. And we're like, I think that, I don't know if it's Austin City Limits or maybe it was the Craig Kilburn show when that was still around. I was like, there it is. And they started, I could tell in their face that is what they recognized, as they thought was a bomb. And then right after that, after they left, they were just like, cool, when are you guys playing again? See ya. And then it was like all the news channels and all that stuff started contacting me about it. But my parents had been contacted, and the band had been contacted, and like all these people, they had questioned all these people about my background.
Wow.
So he's just a dork. But yeah, it was cool to be, it's cool that it ended up like it did. I don't know if I'd ever like necessarily want to be like sought after by the FBI again.
No.
Not a comfortable feeling, huh?
Yeah, because I'm so, like, and that was in the Dallas airport where the Polyphonic Spree is based out of.
It wasn't funny at the time. Thousands of passengers at DFW were evacuated because something resembling a pipe bomb was found in Brian Teasley's luggage.
This microphone here, one of the gentlemen in the band actually made. It's called a copper phone.
But to TSA and FBI agents, it looked like a bomb, and in Dallas, they tore up his luggage to figure out what it was. Meanwhile, Brian was flying happily to Birmingham, unaware of what was going on.
It is a situation of just, not expecting not suspecting anything was happening, and really it was a lot of stuff going down, like as I was on the plane.
Brian and his band Polyphonic Spree had just finished taping Austin City Limits, and Brian brought the mic to do some recording at his home in Avondale.
Hopefully, to my defense, I know nothing about bomb making, so to me, there's going to be some Minority Report kind of, machine where they're going to be like, there's no plutonium in the flux capacitor, so it's going to be, it's fine, it's a microphone. And I wasn't even thinking about it at the time.
But once he landed and realized his luggage was not on the plane, he headed for Taco Bell, and that's when he got the bad news.
It was the FBI that actually first told me, it's like, you've made the national news and you've shut down the Dallas airport. And I was like, no, I was just thinking about fire sauce versus mild sauce.
Now he and the band are headed for David Letterman, but without the mic.
I think I'm just going to ship it this time.
It had to have cost like millions and millions of dollars to cancel those flights, and bring in the bomb squad with a robot arm that's like you see it drop down in this like concrete bunker where there's like a water cannon.
Yeah.
And the microphone, I got the microphone back, and it still worked.
They didn't take it apart?
I don't think so. I think they were like, oh, yeah, okay. They used it on Craig fucking Kilburn. Must be okay.
You're right. That is a big leap forward. I do want to ask about the evolution of the Man or Astroman sound, because at some point it did seem like maybe you were cognizant of surf rock being a limiting sound for you to explore and started to sonically do other things. And a couple of examples that come to mind: Principles Unknown. Was there a line of demarcation where you, as a band, you went, okay, we're going to distance ourselves from surf?
Well, I think it probably has gone down for the people that do care about this kind of stuff. Probably goes down as like, we were not wanting to be traditional or wanting to be, or experiment or wanting to be more, have a broader base or be more indie. I don't know. Like over the years, I've heard all kinds of things like that. But really, the difference between us and so many of those early 90s surf bands or those estrus bands that were surf and garage bands is a lot of those bands played 5 shows a year and, would go to Garage Shock in Bellingham and play a few festivals. We were some years doing 300 shows. And there was one year, I think it was 96, that we were either touring or in the studio 346 days one year. And so if you just extrapolate that, we were like, those other bands were like at infancy 1. And we had already lived like 500 years in comparison by show and recorded material amount and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, you get bored when you're doing it that much and you try to find ways to, I think a lot of it's just trying to find ways to keep yourself interested yourself. And then also we just were playing with a lot of different kind of bands. We kind of got tired of playing with so many surf bands. Not that there weren't tons of great ones. There really were, especially that era. But, it's like almost like the amount of times I've been backstage and about to go watch somebody play, and it's like, oh, okay, we'll see what this version of Pipeline is like. And that's great. That's cool because that's music I love. But when we started playing with bands like, Brainiac or Six Finger Satellite or Blonde Redhead, like just really bands that weren't anything like us, Dianoga, like Don Caballero, Trans Am, like it's hard. For bands when they're on tour for a month and a half together, not to kind of rub off on each other. And I think we just picked up a lot of elements that were a little more expansive just from seeing these weird, great bands that we toured with every night, So I mean, yeah, I think it wasn't like we've got to do something different to market our band it was just, we lived a million years in about 9 years. I don't know why we did it that much. I think we thought that's what everybody did. I think that we thought like, oh yeah, you're supposed to we were at a point where we were already doing pretty well, like, as far as like on an indie level, like, anything that was at least 500 capacity, we would sell out. In the bigger cities, we would do 1,000 cap or something like that. And we were still all sleeping together on like in one hotel room, like 7 of us, like on the floor, and like driving overnight a lot of times on tour to go do a college radio interview during the afternoon, and then play an in-store, and then maybe play an early all-ages show, and then play a show later that night. But we were like, oh yeah, everybody does this like 60 times in a row and then goes home for a week and does it again. And it turns out that's not really accurate.
That's grueling.
Yeah, there's a couple years that are kind of blurry, but yeah, I mean, I don't know how to go back, and I mean, it's impossible to go back, obviously, but I don't know how else we would have been who we are if we hadn't have done it that way. I think we were just always afraid we were so excited to get to travel and to be in a band, and we never thought we were going to be able to do it, that we were always really scared of it going away or losing the ability to do it for some reason.
As a local musician, I don't know that I've ever been so jealous of other musicians as when your band sent out 3 versions of your band on tour at the same time with the Clones project.
Yeah, that was our booking agent, Allie, who we had a guy named Botch that booked us for 3 years, and Allie worked for him at this company called the Billions Corporation, and she's amazing. She's booked us since 95. Yeah. Wow. So what that would be 28 years she's booked us. And the day I called up and explained the concept, it was like silence back. But she did it, and she made it happen. It's like, no, you just have to tell the promoters it's like us. It's our DNA. It's just like other people, but actually our DNA. And so it's not like, and then we're going to go out and like tour manage and sell merch for these bands. It was so convoluted, the whole idea. We thought it was great. We just thought we were probably one of the few bands that could do it or get away with it. And it wasn't like people think, oh, they were cashing in or doing this or trying to make more money, but it's like we had to like get equipment for 3 bands, 3 bands and 3 vans and trailers and crews, and it was a complete pain in the ass. But it's one of those things where I think it did rub a decent bit of people the wrong way when we did it, but in retrospect, a lot of people are like, oh, I got to see the Clones. Like it was kind of a special, bizarre thing. It was like such a strange footnote because it still gets kind of covered every once in a while. Like whenever there's like a article about, Kiss or Smashing Pumpkins want to hire out the band or sell the name to somebody, like it gets referenced a lot. Yeah. So it was such a strange thing. I think we were tired of touring, but didn't want to. But wanted to like let's get somebody else to do that part of it. But we ended up touring alongside it because I had an idea that we would do like 90 shows in a month between the 3 bands. Oh, I'm sorry. This is so not pro.
You're fine.
Sorry. I'll go back. But yeah, I had this idea where Man or Astroman and Mans would do 90 shows in a month. So yeah,
Wow.
it was, and we kind of, I don't know if we did it on purpose. I think we did, but we kind of purposely made the routing like it was like spaghetti noodles thrown on a Randy McNally map. So the band we saw in San Jose one night wasn't necessarily the band playing the next night in San Francisco, or it was just confused as all hell.
That had to have required an insane amount of rehearsal. I imagine you with like a conductor's baton leading rehearsals for bands.
But the weird thing I was on one of the tours. It was somewhere in California, maybe San Diego, and the drummer, this guy Colin, had broken his arm, like with like 3 shows left of the tour, skateboarding like in the parking lot of a club. And I had to play I was out selling merch for that band, for the clone band. And I had to play drums in the Man or Astroman clone cover band. And they were playing things like a little differently. I didn't feel like I did a great job for them. It's like, wait, this is not how we actually play it.
When you were selling merch, did anyone recognize you?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay.
That was like the bizarre twist, I thought, just like to fuck with people.
That's amazing.
Boredom will make you want to fuck with people a lot.
Yes, I can attest to that.
Right?
Oh man. Let's talk briefly about Servotron, which is another project of yours that I love. The song People Mover is permanently ingrained in my head, maybe because I've flown out of the Atlanta airport too many times.
Oh yeah, anybody that knows that airport from back in the day knows that. Yeah, that all that stuff is from the actual tram. It's basically, the lyrics are basically what the tram says.
I know.
And it used to have that Cylon like robot voice, and they have a human voice now. It sucks.
Well, human.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So if you're not familiar, if you're listening to the podcast and you're not familiar with Servotron, sort of these were robots. Was it robots or cyborgs? I forget.
Yeah, I mean, we're all inclusive as long as it wasn't human.
Okay. Robot cyborg band that was trying to usher in the destruction of humanity via our robot overlords.
That's accurate.
Yeah, with where we're at with technology and AI and lots of scary Skynet type of shit happening, is it the time for a Servotron reunion?
I feel like it was kind of the predecessor to. It was kind of the door that opened everything that's now to be possible. But that said, my girlfriend, partner, I have a really bad potty mouth with like Siri and like any kind of like fuck you, you fucking moron. And it's like you're gonna be one of the first, like in the maximum overdrive apocalypse, like you're going to be one of the first to go because you have talked so much smack to AI. No, but that was definitely what we were kind of. Gosh, I hate to get actually philosophical for a moment and be serious, but I think it always kind of occurred to us, like, if man comes from ape, and theoretically you would think that we're a cognizant, like more advanced version of that, then would cybernetic beings or robots not just be an evolution of humanity? And if there is something better, why do we have so much hubris to think we should stay around forever in the universe? And I think we really like started kind of digging into some of that philosophy a bit, but it was just so ripe and fun to play with. And it also kind of had, it was nice because it gave a reason to be confrontational with the crowd. Like, we don't like you. Like, we don't like the people we're playing for. That was part of it. I think I'd been to, at some point in Chicago when we played, I'd been to one of those restaurants where the wait staff is like purposely rude to the customers. And I was like, we should kind of do a band like that, where it's just like, where the whole appeal of it is just to come and get abuse from the band. And we got pretty good at it.
Good for you.
Oh man.
We got some. I mean, we're like dorky people too, and we got some bad fist fights and things with that, especially
really
our guitar player. Yeah, because he would push it pretty to the edge, where it's like, if anybody doesn't want to join the Servatron Robot Allegiance, come on stage and punch me in the face right now. And there's a couple times where people did it, and it just caused like utter chaos. But that was was kind of fun about it too. Is like, but the other thing is we're covered in like sporting gear, pads, and circuit boards hot glued to everything. Like, it's kind of hard to get hurt when you're wearing that stuff. So we didn't do that on purpose, but actually the very first show we ever played was in Athens, Georgia, at this place called the Atomic. And I had, I put the circuit boards so the sharp edges were facing out on this like baseball catcher's vest that I had. And every time I crossed over to play the hi-hat, it would scrape down my arm and cut it up. But I couldn't like get out of the suit or whatever. I just kind of dealt with it and just got bloodier and bloodier. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be so fitting for my stupid life that I commit accidental suicide on stage wearing a robot outfit for 27 people.
I'm glad it didn't come to that.
No, I'm glad too. But also I would have been like, okay, well, I don't think somebody's going to repeat this one.
No.
And also somewhat a fitting obituary for you.
Agreed.
Oh man.
But yeah, that band was definitely like a classic side project where the guitar player that was like a live member of Astroman and I started, and we were like just huge fans of such like that era of new wave music, and just wanted to put it and have a vehicle that we could do it in a fun way. So that's kind of how it came about. But yeah, we went around and got in fights and abused humans and had fun.
Good for you. Can I ask you a question about your association with Chunklet? That was one of my favorite magazines, and it just sort of disappeared.
Yeah, it just like, I think like many things, I think Henry, who did it, like saw moment where it just didn't make sense anymore because it got really strangely popular. I think we sold in between 25 and 30,000 copies of one issue, and which now that sounds like bonkers numbers. Yeah. And it was still just like it's still basically just it was a fanzine, but there was a time where everybody kind of hated it and just thought it was like a bunch of smack talk and a bunch of people being, rude and stupid about music. And then it got where bands wanted to be in it, like to get made fun of. Like we'd have publicists contact us to be like, hey, are you going to do something on blah, blah, blah? It's like, because we literally had an issue where it was like we were offering different money tiers to pay bands to break up.
I remember that.
Like top one was like 50,000 for certain bands. Yeah. I think, we had a few people that were kind of like already on the verge of breaking up, being like, "We'll take you up." But I was like, you guys are kind of already got a toe in the water of breaking up. But it was fun. It was cool because Henry, especially, was like kind of tied in and was a big, huge part. And look, I was fortunate to get connected to it too, to that early world of like David Cross and Patton Oswalt and all these Zach Galifianakis deciding they were going to play at like rock clubs for like a GA standing audience. Hey, that's awesome. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. And
that's one of David Cross's documentaries, right?
Right. Yeah. There was that.
Can't remember the name of it.
That one that I think is really hard to find now because it has a weird incident at the exit end where I think they sued him or something because of they had put that they were going to film there, and then he just like goes. It's a whole thing. You should try to find it if you.
That's great.
But that was cool to get to be kind of on board. I get to go on the Mr. Show tour with Chunklet and the Comedians of Comedy, which was Patton and Zach and Maria Bamford and Brian Posehn. And
wow,
that was really exciting, especially seeing those people like when they were both like amazing and had like ninja chops at that point of their career, but also were like not as big of Hollywood staples, that they weren't just completely raw and edgy and just would purposely, especially like Zach would purposely some nights just dig himself in a hole to see how he could get out of it. And
do you remember the old Zach Galifianakis show? I don't.
Yeah.
My God, it's one of the funniest things. I remember watching it, going, "What the hell is this?" And it was just so much fun. You mentioned digging a hole, and he would do that repeatedly.
Right. Yeah, that is so. Yes, very few people saw that. And he had great guests on there too. Like Fred Armisen was on there a bunch, like doing Ferricito and other characters, and it's crazy that most of those people have ended up being huge staples of mainstream comedy now.
That was really sort of the beginning of alternative comedy.
Exactly. Yeah. Because, I think a lot of those people had to, like David Cross and Patton and all those people had to obviously have a foot in that like awful comedy club, like, whatever drink minimum and fried poppers and, calamari kind of, like old school comedy clubs standing in front of a brick wall. And I think they just weren't feeling it being really honest and real. And that wasn't the audience that really got what they did. So I think they were really smart and, starting to do rock clubs and get to a younger, hipper audience.
100%. No, that's great. I just remember reading this magazine. I don't know where I found it. And I'm like, Chunklet. And I think I bought it because there were stickers involved or something. I'm like, all right, well, it's kind of funny. And I think Chuck Klosterman wrote an article in one episode. I think that might have been the reason I bought it.
Oh, really? Possibly. I can't remember if
I don't know. It was either Stickers or Chuck Klosterman, or perhaps both.
There's like so many contributors. I mean, the sticker that was really famous was the one that's like, "We're all in this together, except you're a dick."
Yep. I never stuck that at anything because I thought it was so great, and it's probably somewhere in a box.
Right. Yeah, that I have one up somewhere for sure.
Yeah,
filing cabinet at work.
Good stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but no, Henry's great. He's one of my longest friends, and he's just done amazing stuff. Like now doing like almost like archivist kind of work with. He's had a few really amazing like flyer poster books documenting the Athens music scene, the Atlanta music scene. He's got one coming out in Alabama, and he's just some of the stuff he's found. And I've been with him just a couple times of it, but it's not just like Townes Van Zandt playing a coffee shop in some weird small town in Alabama in the 70s, but it's also like old Philip Sousa like marching concert. It's the craziest stuff that he's like gotten, and because there's so much of that stuff right now that's so important to be saved because it's literally in people's attics on the verge of being thrown away or getting water damaged. And God, there's such a history of just not only outside of graphic design but just like documenting all the shows over the years. And it doesn't have to be a scene like Lower Manhattan in the late 70s that needs to be that important of a scene to be documented. It's so cool to see what's under the rocks all over the country in these weird little college towns and places that so many crazy things happen.
That's interesting work.
Yeah, I'm sure he's got them on the Chunklet website.
I'm looking now. Oh, I'm on the Bandcamp website right now. But
yeah. I'm curious, did you know Tim? How did you get involved with Polyphonic Spree?
It was through Seth, who, there was this guy, Seth Lozier, who's a really amazing guy. He toured with a ton of bands now, but his first band he toured with was Manor Astroman. He used to work for Touch and Go Records.
Okay.
We took him on tour. His Manor Astroman name was Q-Beam. He was like on the EVIAC like Spectrum era tours of the second version of Manor Astroman. And he had been working with this band, The View, that had put out two really cool records on Sub Pop. And then they signed to RCA, made this really like expensive record with Nick Launay, who had done like NXS, and Nick Cave, and Australian producer. And then he called me, because their drummer was having some issues, and he called me and was like, "Hey, we're going to go to Europe to play with the Rolling Stones in a week. Can you learn all these songs?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Send me the songs and I'll tell you." And so I did that. I was with that band for about a year and a half, and then he moved on to working with the Polyphonic Spree, and they had one of the drumming percussion positions open. And that was kind of a time where I was filling in for a lot of people and thought I would just jump in bands and be a hired gun for a while.
You also got to work with Annie. I think you have a friendship and a relationship with Annie St. Vincent. Played on a couple of her records?
Yeah, because we were friends in the Polyphonic Spree. And you could just tell that she was kind of like a freak of nature, as far as not only like talent wise, but also just sponge wise. Like everything that she would pick up on, she would pick up so fast, and just had that kind of manic music savant brain. And yeah, I was there definitely early on, and was, just did what little part I could to try to help, in the little bits of her career that started. She was recording a record, and then we came and did a lot of it here at my friend Daniel's studio in Birmingham, Alabama. And then she did a lot of overdubs and things at her house in Dallas too. And that's the record, Marry Me, that came out in like 2007, maybe. But yeah, it's crazy. And then after that, she just blew up. But it's kind of like the way I see Annie is that like she was going to be massive no matter what and put a mark down. It's like, I think people early on in some people's career that were a part of it think, oh, I was a part of helping making this happen or this, but it's kind of like being one of the people that is early on stumbling upon the Grand Canyon. You're like, hey, look at this place. Maybe people will want to see this one day. It's like the same kind of thing. Somebody's eventually going to find the Grand Canyon, just because it's so amazing. And that's kind of how she is. I just like recognized it, and we had fun, and like, she's just such a talent and such a creative force, and somebody that doesn't mind like working as hard as possible and like streamlining life to make it all about the creative endeavor of what she's trying to achieve. So yeah, huge respect for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're close on an hour here. I do have a one last question I want to ask, but I also want to give Keith a chance to get one last one in because I've bogarted this episode. I know that you still perform, but that's not your main thing. Your main thing now is running this venue here in Birmingham, and Saturn is one of the venues that every artist that I interact with that has played that room compliments it as one of the best venues in America in terms of the accommodations for the artist and the thoughtfulness put into the artist aspect of being a guest there and performing there. And as a result of that, I know that you've interacted with thousands. What is it like being a club owner in 2024? And I know that's a big question.
It's interesting. I think we all are at a place, especially like in the smaller venue world, where it has a lot of frustrations like it probably used to, but at the same time, I think we don't take it for granted the way we might have before the pandemic. Just all of us, a lot of people that are in like Neva and, other venues that are with, bigger companies too, that sat around for almost 2 years and during the pandemic, like mopping floors that had already been mopped with a furloughed staff. Just the ability to do shows again and see people like have fun and be together in a room is such an amazing thing. And I don't take it for granted at all. And, I've learned, I had a smaller club here in Birmingham, and it was a little more, I would say it was like slightly more curated, just because it was a little smaller and very like of that, like 2000s aughts, early 2000 teens, like indie rock realm of a lot of great bands playing there. But now just having people really enjoy something, even if it's not musically in my bag, so to say, just vicariously, I get so much of a thrill about it. Cause I try to think about like, wow, that, I mean, I get what this band is doing, but the kids that are here, that's like how it was seeing in Echo and the Bunnymen in the 80s for me, or what, or whatever like that. So, yeah, I feel like that's a big part of it. I think it still has its challenges and its struggles, and it's very hard to do if you don't love doing it. It's like careful what you wish for. Because it's like working at a different place every day. We have a completely different group of people, completely different, bands, like it's not like saying you work at a restaurant where even if the clientele is a little different night to night, you're kind of still doing the exact same thing. I mean, sometimes it's vastly different depending on the show, but I don't know. I think here in Birmingham, and now I think there's like the healthiest amount of shows and music venues that there's ever been, at least in my life, and there's so many new great places. Like they just reopened Workplay and Woodlawn Theater and that Lawn Chair Youth Space. I mean, and it's like, of course, the Firehouse. There's like so many great like places for like underground and punk and indie bands to play. But that said, like I've always kind of viewed both Bottle Tree and Saturn almost like a cultural imperative where I felt like I wasn't sure that if like I didn't do this, that somebody else would just step in right behind me and do it. Like maybe if I don't do this, nobody will at this moment. And those kind of places to me that I played in little smaller cities or secondary, tertiary, like large cities were, I don't know, you could just tell the people there cared so much because they might not have had it always exist, or they might knew what it would be like if it went away. And so I've kind of always approached it like that what we do still matters. And even if that's just people coming for a concert one night and forgetting about their shitty life and their shitty job for 3 hours, that's noble just in and of itself, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you for all of the music because, as I said, without question, there is no group that I've seen more times in concert than Man or Astroman. So much joy. And I probably wouldn't be a musician, candidly, if it weren't for seeing Man or Astroman at an all-ages show.
I'm so sorry.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for that.
No, thank you, though. Thank you. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I probably owe you some money then.
Yeah. And the way that you run your club, we were very fortunate to have the Pauses on our podcast.
Oh yeah,
and they came through town and played a gig with us at the Firehouse, which is the all ages spot just down the street from your club.
Sure. Yeah.
And what a lot of people would never know, and I'm going to out you here in front of all of our listeners, is that they weren't playing your venue that night.
Right.
But you still reached out and said, hey, while you're in town, please come stay at the apartment attached to the venue.
Yeah.
Just because you'd had them as a guest before. And that.
Yeah. We didn't have anybody stay. I always like people to use the space and take advantage of the space if no one else is using it. So, and when you're a small touring band, having a nice, clean place to stay is an expense saved, and it's a headache kind of taken away. So yeah,
it makes you a wonderful ambassador for the city, and I appreciate it. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, that's the thing to remember. It's like a lot of bands are in town for 12 hours, and they're going to see the Firehouse and Saws, Barbecue, and Saturn, and a couple other things. Their 12 hours of what Birmingham is like is mostly inside our building. And so the whole impression they're going to get for our whole city is what our staff and what we do for them. So that's something that I don't want to ever, that I would never want that to be lost.
That is incredibly refreshing to hear. I don't think that's, I don't think that would be the norm.
Well, I think also it's a challenge too, because we just want to blow people's minds with what their expectation is of Alabama. If you're a band from like London or Tokyo or somewhere, and you're like see Alabama and you're routing, and like I think it was at Bottle Tree, but I had somebody literally say, it's like, I am just amazed that you guys. I was literally expecting people that weren't going to make complete sentences, and It's not quite as Jethro as that. Come on.
We got toilets that flush and everything.
I know. Most of the time they do. So yeah. It's But I was like, man, this is pretty Beverly Hillbillies perception. And I mean, we deserve it. I get that idea of Alabama, and a lot of times it does ring true. But I always say, like, Birmingham's such an odd beast that I feel like a lot of it's not like that. Sometimes people was like, this is not like Alabama. It's like, well, you can go 20 minutes in any direction and find it.
That's right.
I will have to make it down.
If you want to hear a banjo, it's not far.
If you want to find yourself in a very strange situation in a barn while dueling banjos is playing, head 20 minutes any direction.
That's right.
Awesome.
Hey, this has been super fun, man. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm glad we got to do it.
Yeah, thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
All right.
Awesome. Take care.
I'll see you in Saturn.
Yeah, for sure. And come down sometime.
Yeah. Keith, come down.
I will. One day.
One day. Okay. I'll hold you to it.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, man.
Many thanks to Brian for making the time to chat with us. Be sure to check out Man or Astroman, The Polyphonic Spree, and Servotron wherever you stream your favorite music.
This episode of Abandoned Albums was written and produced by Keith R. Higgins and Jeff Calhoun. The show was recorded at Thunderlove Studio, where it was engineered by
Daphne Morris,
with help from
Penetration.
Abandoned Albums was edited by
Vic Titball,
with help from
Clem Fandango.
Our theme song is Solo Flight by Charlie Christian. In the opening of the show, the songs you heard were The Ballad of Peter Pumpkinhead by XTC, Never Say Never by Romeo Void, and The Walls Came Down by The Call. You can stream all of those artists wherever you stream your favorite music.
Original music by Mike Pellegrino.
The songs you heard during this podcast were Antimatter Man, Nitrous Burnout, Invasion of the Dragon Man, Principles Unknown, and Servotron's People Mover. You can stream all of these songs and their respective albums wherever you stream your favorite music. Please remember to support independent artists.
If you like what you've heard, please remember to subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps other people find the podcast. Thanks for listening.
Grazie.
Bailey Leaf,
Rob Janicki, Mike Pellegrino, Thurina Bella,
Eric Beatner, S.W. Loudon, Ronnie Barnett,
Michael Janicki, Peyton Janicki, and our executive producer,
Rufus Thunderlove.
Abandoned Albums receives funding from Damon Pharmaceuticals, the makers of Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck is the only chewable tablet made to combat stomach unease associated with mediocrity. Taken daily, Ben Affleck can help combat explosive gastrointestinal shame. You can find a multitude of flavors in the incontinence section of your local pharmacy. Ben Affleck, save yourself the embarrassment.
The side effects include dry mouth, headache, anal leakage, muscle soreness, bad decisions, gender confusion, constipation, evil spirit possession, and banality. Use only as directed.
And now, until we meet again next time, I remain as always obediently yours.
Abandoned Albums is a production of Paw Print Media.